Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. You've got a responsibility to go back to Lodabar. Your work's not done just because you made it to the palace. Bless the name of the Lord. But you've got a responsibility to help somebody else make it across. Thank you, Jesus. Don't pull up the ladder because you climbed to the top. Don't blow up the bridge because you made your way across. Thank you, Jesus. But reach your hand back down the ladder and pull somebody else up out of Lodabar. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. That's the name of the Lord. Somebody got to tell themselves, it's all right if you got it now. Just hold it for me. I'll be there to get it after a while. Oh, bless the name of the Lord. Thank you, Jesus. You got to make up in your mind that what God has for me, it is for me. I might not have it right now. May not get it next week. You might try to stop me from getting it. But if God said it's mine, I want you to know after a while, I'm going to get what belongs to me. Sometimes God 90.7 TCC. Good morning. Welcome to the Spoken Word. I'm your host, Bishop Talbert Swan II. And as usual, we'll be telling it like it is through cultural idioms and nuances that shape the order, ethos, and chaos of the African-American experience. Words have their own vitality. They shape their own consciousness and create their own context for interpreting social and spiritual reality. The spoken word contains the power to reshape the landscape of society. It is time check, 4 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. I want to thank Mr. Kenneth Barnett bringing us the 9 o'clock hour. I want to thank Mr. Malachias for getting us on the air and each of you for tuning in. It's been quite the morning, y'all. So y'all pray for me. It's been quite, I haven't even been able to make my tea. I normally am able to eat a little breakfast, get my tea in and all that, but I had all kinds of Wi-Fi and technical difficulties and all of that stuff. Oh, but we're here. We're here live from the man cave, remotely broadcasting on 90.7 WTCC. Good to be here. As always, 413-337-1867. Listen, what I'm talking about today, my sisters and my brothers, the George Floyd trial started Monday of last week. It's been crazy. And my question is, why is George Floyd on trial? instead of the man who murdered him. Because that's what we've been seeing. It's like black victims get put on trial posthumously as a defense to try to acquit white murderers. And then, I'll talk a little bit about the why do white folks get so triggered with how black folks choose to talk about white supremacy, bigotry, all of that kind of stuff. I'm just trying to wrap my head around that because, I get hate mail on a regular basis anyway, and I mean that's not a big deal. I mean it happens to me all the time, but this week I'm getting it from white pastors. And I know you say, well, you know what, Bishop, you always say that, white evangelicalism, white Christianity is nothing but white supremacy in drag. Yeah, but they tend to try to hide it a little bit. But I mean, this guy is the pastor of a Lutheran church. Check out my social media. You'll see it. Go to my Instagram or my Twitter. And, he sends me an email, with name on it, the whole nine, talking about how the devil is going to flay my flesh in hell. I mean, these folks get really triggered when you talk about white supremacy, when you condemn racism and white supremacy. Yeah, so the devil's going to flay my flesh in hell because I'm condemning the sin of racism. It's a sickness, y'all. It's a sickness. 413-337-1867. Stay with us. We're coming right back after this song by T. Swan. Tell a friend, tell somebody. The Bishop is on the air. Rep your city, rep your town. Let me know where you're chiming in from. Do me a favor, like, share, subscribe on YouTube, all of that kind of stuff. Let's get ready to rumble. Okay, y'all? Let's go.
For all the brothers that passed, but more particularly one because it affected me drastically. I remember my sister gave me the call and I was in awe. Matter of fact, it felt the farthest from reality. She seen somebody post RIP with his name and I said I doubt it's the same friend I had since the 7th grade. She said I'ma call his sister and double check and call back. Said he hanged himself in his room and had been there for days. Initially it didn't hit me, then it clicked and I remembered that I hadn't seen or heard from the homie all week. Wish she had told me what had him feeling lonely and weak. I guess everybody got demons we don't even speak of. Cause I was with him exactly a week before the call. To the 20, he couldn't even purchase alcohol. My best friend for like 6 or 7 years. I'm not ashamed to say I shedded plenty tears, but it was hard. He was somebody I had plenty memories with. The person I ever burned any trees with. The worst feeling is knowing that you would leave us and all this grievance without one of the first people to ever believe it. When it came down to it, you knew you could call me if you needed me. Cause that mission I wouldn't have ever imagined. It's sad thinking about it. I ain't happy that it happened, but it made me. There was plenty times when I thought that it would drive me crazy. But looking back on it now, I see all the drive that it gave me. I learned more about why I am who I am daily. I know it may sound crazy, but I'm glad that it made me. Yeah, was born the son of a pastor. He was who I was named after. Matter of fact, I even got some of his characteristics. Both of us got messages for the people. I just do mine with rhythm on beat. He do his on the pulpit with scriptures. Well connected, respected in the community. Ever since I was little, I felt like there was some pressure on me. It started off with little stuff like when my folk brought us to church and then they forced us to get up and say a testimony. Getting older, had to watch how I acted it in public. Cause people wouldn't hesitate to put that in discussion. Chatting like, is it that the pastor's kid? I'm like, yeah, that's me. But please don't expect me to be exactly like my daddy. Don't discredit my family for how I am. I'm not a little kid no more, I'm now a man. And I ain't pointing fingers, I'm not trying to do no blaming at all. When it comes to how I came up, I wouldn't change it at all. Because it made me. There was plenty times when I thought that it would drive me crazy. But looking back on it now, I see all the drive that it gave me. I learned more about why I am who I am on the daily. I know I may sound crazy, but I'm glad that it made me. Yeah, glad that it made me. Yeah, glad that it made me. Looking back on it now, I see all the drive that it gave me. So glad that it made me. Yeah, it made me. Yeah, it made me.
All right. 90.7, 90.7 WTCC. Good morning. It's the spoken word. The Bishop Talbert Swan on the air. Good morning. I see my daughter from the Shy, my daughter Whitney, my grandbabies from the Shy. I see my cousin Shadrach. What's happening, little cuz? Good morning, Michael Moore. Good morning, Stephanie Johnson, Sally Sear. I'm going to get in trouble calling names. Good morning, Cheryl Howard, Orlando Mitchell, Mathis Daniels, Laureen Turner, Jack Smith. Good morning, Medina. Good morning, Elder Myron Peters, my fellow Kojic preacher, all the way out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Mark Bayman Jr. right here from the field. Good morning, Janice White is watching. So many of y'all, Ryan Weiss, y'all are watching me on. Juanita Beeman is in the house. Y'all are on Facebook. Y'all are on Twitter and Periscope. Y'all are on Twitch. Y'all are on the Gram. What else are y'all on? Y'all are on YouTube, and y'all are listening over 4,000 watts right here in the Pioneer Valley, up in Western Massachusetts, Vermont, Connecticut. All of those points. Good morning to each and every one of you. Listen. The romance of last year's George Floyd moment is in the rearview mirror. All of the massive protests against anti-Black racism that were rolling in seemingly inexhaustible waves throughout the summer are over. We've now gotten to the point where we've reached the Derek Chauvin trial. And, you know, some would say that this is progress. It's progress because an officer has actually been charged with second and third degree murder, second degree manslaughter, after agonizing years of police killing Black suspects in front of witnesses on video with few legal consequences. But even though he's facing trial, anxiety is gathering about whether this former Minneapolis cop is going to be convicted of squeezing the life out of George Floyd by pressing a knee to his neck for a horrifying 9 minutes and 29 seconds. I got a shirt that says 8:46 that was given to me by my friend, Dr. Freddie Haynes. And we got to get new t-shirts now because as the trial has revealed, It was not just 8 minutes and 49 seconds as we thought. He knelt on his neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Okay. And the world watched it unfold. The world watched it unfold thanks to a teenager videotaping it. And so it seems that his murder should be impossible to refute. Think about it. It seems like it should be impossible. How do you refute that this man was murdered? We see it. It's right there in living color. It's right there in front of us. We see it. And as much as Chauvin belongs in a courtroom, we got to remember that courthouses in America are just places where too many persuasive cases of excessive force, of abuse, and murder of Black people have gone to die and for nothing to happen. Right? It's happened over and over again, especially if, in rare cases, the defendants are police, especially if the defendants are police. The American criminal injustice system, overall, it remains ground zero for structural racism in America. Let me say that one more time, just so you can understand. I said the American criminal injustice system remains ground zero for structural racism in America. It's where it all begins. And there are many reasons. But the one under discussion now is that it takes just a little bit of what they call reasonable doubt. One slightly unconvinced juror among 12 that can thwart justice. That's all it takes. That's the reality of the American criminal injustice system. Now, when you think about it, how many people in your circles, how many of your white associates, co-workers, neighbors, maybe some of your friends are saying, yeah, it was terrible what happened, but, he did have fentanyl in his system. It could have been the drugs. He did have a bad heart. Could have had a heart attack. I mean, how many of them do you know of that are literally ignoring the cop on his neck and pretending that had nothing to do with it? Like if George Floyd was just walking along that day with no knee on his neck, he would have dropped dead for these other reasons that they're using to justify. And I say that because all it takes is one of those type of people sitting on this jury. One. Just takes one for there to be a hung jury. And for this guy to walk out of that courtroom a free man after murdering a Black man on video. And he knew he was being videotaped. He sat there with a smirk on his face, knowing he was being videotaped. He didn't care. He didn't care. Still choked the life out of him. That's all we need is one slightly unconvinced juror. And not even that they're unconvinced that Chauvin played a role. Just get them to say, yeah, well, maybe it wasn't Chauvin. Maybe it was the drugs. And see, fentanyl is an opioid. And you all know, across America, they have declared opioid addiction, opioid use, a public health crisis. because the majority of the people who use opioids are white people. Unlike when the crack epidemic, or even prior to that, there was an opioid epidemic before the current opioid epidemic, when black folk were strung out on heroin and stuff, smack, that, you know, what they called it. That was opioids. But it was all about being tough on crime, having zero tolerance, and criminalizing the drug pusher and the drug user. But when the face of opioid addiction changed, when white folks got hooked on prescription drugs and then turned to heroin, etc., it was a public health crisis. Notice how quickly the narrative changes from opioids being a public health crisis to when George Floyd had opioids in his system, it's back to criminality when it's a black man. Notice how quick that happened. Now, if it's a white kid on fentanyl, it would be like, oh my goodness, you know, this opioid crisis is so terrible. The poor kid needs help. But because it's a black man, oh, you know, he was on drugs. They use it as a justification for his murder. It's crazy. I mean, the so-called anti-racism awakening that people had during the Trump era notwithstanding, we can all agree there's more than enough skepticism circulating in this nation about character of black people to sink even a clear-cut case of murder in this George Floyd case. Because every time the victim is a black person, it's not their murderer who goes on trial. It's the victim who goes on trial. And it's not just the victim who goes on trial. I see my DC IOTA brothers in the house. It's not just the victim that goes on trial. It's all of Black America that goes on trial. And the narrative becomes, well, black people make up only a small percentage of the population, but they commit most of the crimes, which is a lie. But all of that starts floating around in cases like this because white folk are looking for a justification. They're looking for a reason to exonerate a white cop. They're looking for a reason to justify it in their minds that this black person was deserving of death. And even if the reason is the same reason that they would say a white person needs help, like fentanyl use. Once again, you know, I can't underscore that enough. Notice, if a white kid is hooked on fentanyl, oh, poor kid, poor guy, you know, this opioid crisis, you know, darn that pharma, that big pharma, all those pharmaceutical companies and those doctors, darn them. Poor guy. It's a health crisis. But a black man using the same substance. Oh, you know, the guy was a junkie in the first place. Can't blame the cop. I mean, you see how easily I mean, the cognitive dissonance, the sheer hypocrisy, the wicked double standards that they use, you know, that you take two people suffering from the same addiction and they have two completely different takes on it depending on the color of their skin. The character of black people is always what's on trial. The character of black people, their humanity, their presumed innocence is always called into question. Matter of fact, black people don't ever get the presumption of innocence. We don't get the presumption of innocence. We're not innocent until proven guilty. We are always guilty until proven innocent. You know that's true. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Bishop Swan. How are you doing?
I'm good. You?
Not to change the subject. Did you catch the versus battle last night? They don't make me like that.
I caught a teeny snippet of it. You know, after watching the games and hanging out with my family for Resurrection, man, I had to lay it down somewhat. But and I woke up and it was actually still on at like 11 o'clock, and I caught a tiny snippet of it. I caught Earth, Wind, and Fire singing Reasons.
It was a blessing. I just want to call in. Usually I call in for football and everything, man. You have a blessed day, man. It was really good.
All right, you too. Take care.
All right.
All right. 413-337-1867. Yeah, the versus battle. The Isley Brothers and Earth, Wind, and Fire. I have to go back and watch that. So yeah, the character of Black people is always on trial. Our humanity is always on trial. We're always presumed guilty until proven innocent. Character assassination is fundamental to structural racism. Say that one more time. Character assassination is fundamental to structural racism. Because if we can, I got a piece out when George Floyd was first killed. We took some snippets from a sermon that I preached called We Still Can't Breathe, put it to music, and put out several pieces on the EP. You can catch it on Spotify, anywhere you stream music. And one of those pieces I think is powerful. It's called Thugification. And basically, if you can thugify Black people, that's why they use those words. You know, if you can convince other white folks that, you know, they were nothing but a thug anyway, then you can justify killing them. It's thugification, dehumanization, diminishing our humanity to justify killing us. Character assassination. All of that is fundamental to structural racism. It precedes it. I mean, Chauvin's lawyers, of course, are arguing technicalities, claiming Floyd died of cardiac arrest. Well, let me see. If he died of cardiac arrest, wasn't it the knee in his neck for 9 minutes, 29 seconds that caused the cardiac arrest? It's like when I was one of the most traumatic things I ever saw when I was a youngster in college at the University of Massachusetts. I was in the southwest section of the campus. Those of you familiar with UMass will know what I'm talking about. Going to one of my fraternity brothers' room in John Quincy Adams' dormitory, and it was one of the high rises, one of the highest buildings on the campus. And this woman, who was not affiliated with the college, had came to the campus and went up onto the roof of JQA and jumped off the roof, committed suicide. And just the sight of what was on the ground after was traumatizing. It's harrowing in my mind to this very day. But say that most people who jump off buildings like that, commit suicide in that manner, die before they hit the ground. That they die of a heart attack, a fright, before they hit the ground. Does it mean that jumping off the building didn't cause their death? Would they have had a heart attack anyway if they hadn't jumped off the building on that day? That's how these people sound in this George Floyd trial. Oh, he died of a heart attack. Like he was going to have a heart attack on that same day if that cop had not put his knee in his neck. They want to say he was in bad health, he used drugs, and just never mind, the knee on the neck. And it's not surprising that Chauvin's lawyer would use it from a legal standpoint. Everybody's entitled to a defense. I'm not so much worried about his lawyers using that because I expect them to use that. But to my white brothers and sisters out here shoveling that dung and pushing that narrative, y'all know that's a bunch of malarkey. Y'all know y'all know what that is. But you're really trying to push that as the cause of his death, like what the cop did had nothing to do with it. I mean, if I scare you and you have a heart attack, did I still not scare you? Was that still not the catalyst that caused your heart attack? I mean, would you have had a heart attack that day anyway? It doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even make sense. And really, let me tell you what they're really arguing. What the defense is really arguing is that George Floyd died because he didn't deserve to live. That's the reality. That's really what they're arguing. That he died because he didn't deserve to live. He was a big black man. He was sporadically employed. He was a drug user. He had prior encounters with police. Okay? He was marginal. So they're thugifying him. Okay? They're arguing that he was going to die young anyway. And he was going to die badly. It was just a matter of time and circumstance. This dude was going to wind up dead anyway. That's the argument. And they are banking on some white person on that jury buying into that argument because it's an argument that they've been using on black people for time immemorial. He was going to die young. He was going to die badly anyway. All right. And since he was going to die young, since he was going to die badly, since he was sporadically employed, since he was a drug user, since he was not fit to live, the knee on the neck ain't a reason to send a good white man to prison. This is, in a nutshell, this is the defense. This is what they're arguing. That N-word was going to die anyway. Don't send this good white man to prison because of him. Especially a police officer that's gainfully employed and he was just doing his job. These, my brothers and sisters, are the aspersions cast on black victims, particularly men and boys who have gone before Floyd. Just think about all of them. The Rodney Kings, the Devin Browns, the Trayvon Martins, the Tamir Rices, the Michael Browns, the Philando Castiles, even those with aspirations who can't be written off as marginal, like a Philando Castile, or like the emergency medical technician Breonna Taylor. They are undermined by this narrative of criminality and inherent black unworthiness. They've tried to write Breonna Taylor off while she was dating a guy who was no good. You know, the guy they were looking for was her ex-boyfriend, and he was a drug dealer. So that means she deserved to die. I'm going to tell you, it's exhausting. This narrative is exhausting. It's exhausting. It's insulting. Oh, my goodness. See if we get this call on. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Bishop. How was you, sir?
I'm good. You?
Good, sir. Good. I was just calling to chime in, like how they cast aspersions on people's names. Like that even happened here. A young man named Cameron Starks was murdered, and 30 rounds went to the car and everything like that. But Mass Live and the mayor and the police commissioner want to bring up his past, and they talk bad about him and his family. But the family, Veronica, and them pushed back and tell them how the young man changed his life, how he was working. But they do all of that too, so that when they don't investigate the murder cases, they make us unhuman. So therefore, the mayor doesn't want to talk about. Since he's been mayor, there have been 23 unsolved homicides of Black and Latino youth. From 1993 to 2014, there has been 40 unsolved homicides of Black and Latino youth. And we're waiting for the district attorney, Anthony Giuliani, to give us the updated list from 2015 to now, because there could be 40 or more unsolved homicides of Black and Latino people in the community. But if you can talk about them and make it all seem gang related, then they dehumanize us so that we don't get our justice, and they buried it under the carpet. But we know if there were 40 unsolved murders.
No, if there were one.
But 40 unsolved homicides. 23 of them have occurred since Sarno has been in office. We have a police commissioner, and she goes on and says in the Mass Live on March 21st that it's hard to get information because don't get no support. Then in the same article she says, we know who the players are. They are brazen and they are emboldened. They're driving around in cars with weapons. Well, first you say you don't know who they are. Now you're saying you don't know who they are. You haven't made any arrests, but you come in the community talking about we need to lock people up. Well, there's 40 people who committed murder, Dominic Sarno, that you have not locked up. He should resign, and the police commissioner should be fired. But because it's only Black people, and then they don't want to speak about it. They don't want to talk about his record right now. He wants to come and talk about lock people up. Well, hell, you haven't locked anybody up in about 30 murders that took place in this city.
Well, I want them to lock up the criminals on the police force. You got a couple convicted felons on the police force right now. One is a captain. LaBelle is a captain. He's a convicted felon who keeps getting into trouble. Here's a guy who's already a convicted felon. Then he pulls a gun on somebody in the Walmart parking lot in a road rage incident. You got another guy who beat a Black 14-year-old at Commerce High that's on payroll. So we got convicted felons on payroll. So don't talk to me about those in the community when you won't even deal with the criminals that are in the police force.
Thank you, sir. So I just wanted to highlight that this morning, and prayerfully sometime this week, I need to sit down and talk with you so we can show you something. Maybe it should be an investigation on that police department with all of these unsolved homicides. You have mothers coming to our institution. I work for more mothers overlooked, reaching out for empowerment, and we have mothers and families who have been traumatized by violence and gunfights, and nobody is telling the families of the murdered victims about who did the killing, where you're at. An update, Bishop, in the last 100 days, we've had 3 murders. One of them, I was taping the end of it on College Street. They heard the car, they had a car, and they had the license plate number. Do you know we haven't heard anything yet from any of the murders that just took place? So who is he to come tell us to get involved? There are family members, Bishop, who see that cases are not being solved,
Yeah.
So thank you for allowing me this opportunity. But you're right. But when the landslide does that article on Camry, what that says is they're supposed to die. So if we have a cold case and we're going to let it sit for 20 years because like Mother Shepherd lost her twin 16 years ago, we can just let it go. Why? Because they're black people.
Right.
They're supposed to die.
Mm-hmm.
So when we kill them, we're just helping out America.
Absolutely.
So thank you for your diligence. Thank you for the time, sir.
All right. Thank you for your call. 413-337-1867. Yeah, that's basically the narrative that, more than likely these N-words were going to die early. They were going to die young. They were going to die in some terrible fashion anyway. So, don't be extra resources in solving these crimes, and definitely don't send white police officers to prison over them. That's the narrative, y'all. That's the reality of it, for real. Good morning, caller.
Good morning. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. You?
Doing pretty good. Pretty good. Figured I'd chime in on the conversation.
All right.
Yeah, my thing is this. Sometimes I have the time to get into details. I live a very busy life. And, I've been hearing things here and hearing things there about when it took place, and now it's in court. My thing is this.
You talking about the George Floyd case?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
And my thing is this. Can you hear me clearly?
I hear you.
Okay, so my thing is this. I like to look at things from a broader scope. From like a broader scope. I like to stand back and look at things from a broader perspective. How many times is this going to happen? This has been happening for so long, over and over. And we as black people are still in the same position. We have to learn and adopt different techniques for a different outcome. It's the same story on the hamster wheel. We're on a hamster wheel. It's the same thing over and over. And my thing is this. I speak to my cousin about these situations, and I always look at things as, as far as like a high IQ, a person who cannot identify their outcome from the same actions, the same formula that they've been using, and they're getting the same results. That person should identify and say, hey, this formula is not working.
Now here, let me put
to the drawing board to draw up a new blueprint.
Let me push back.
Different results.
Let me push back. Let me push back. I agree with that from the perspective of if it's something that I have control over, and I'm the one putting the formula together and getting the same results over and over again. But from the perspective of being a black person living in America and really having no control over much of what's in the formula, that creates, perpetuates, and sustains white supremacy, racism, and anti-black bigotry. Those are things that are beyond my control. So what do I do in those situations when I can't control much of what's in the formula?
Well, first of all, you got to have the mindset. You have to see that's the wrong mindset right there. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the computer and you talking at the same time, so I got mixed up a little bit.
Go ahead.
First of all, you got to have a different mindset. You got to have a different mindset. First, you got to know. They always tell you back in the days of cartoon G.I. Joe, knowing is half the battle. First of all, you got to know about power and how to get it. You have to know it first. These people that are in powerful positions know about power. And the second half of knowing is practicing and doing. See, we're thinking from the jump. We're not in position of power. We can't do anything. It's not our formula. Well, you can create your own formula. It's like, it's always said before to other people, it's like two fighters. If you got fighter A and fighter B, and fighter A is getting inside the head of fighter B by talking trash, he's already beating him mentally. He doesn't believe in himself. He doesn't have to listen to fighter A. Fighter B should block that out and say, no, that's not the roadmap. I'm not listening to you. I'm going to train harder. I'm going to hit harder. I'm going to be faster. You wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning. You run miles, I'm running 20. You can't listen to your opponent. You cannot listen to your oppressor. You can't play by his rules because the rules that he's applying is rules for him to win. You can't play that way. You have to come up with your own strategy to counter.
Well, here's the thing. If the game I'm in is a game that was made up by him, the rules were made up by him. He's the referee. He's the one controlling the game. Then I can do what I can, but at the end of the day, we've got to create our own game board and play it our way. But as long as he's the master of the game, then he's going to control the outcome.
Right. So again, like you get just to go back to fighting. I spoke to you before how I studied mixed martial arts. Let's just say you got a fighter who's a striker, a stand-up striker, who throws punches and kicks. That's his main weapon. And the other fighter not really good at punching and kicks. He's a wrestler. If the wrestler fights the guy, the striker, was striking, he's going to lose. So he has to find another way to smother the striker's ability. And that's by pressing him up against the cage and taking his ass down to the ground.
I hear what you're saying.
We have to find a technique to stop this. We have to come up with a strategy. And these camp of fighters, they sit in the tape rooms and watch the tapes. And they go to the gym and train for this type of stuff. So when they step into the octagon or the ring against their opponent, they know exactly what to do. And their chances of winning become higher, become greater.
All right.
Because of their plan.
All right. I got a guest coming on. I appreciate your call, though. Always good points you're making. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right. 413-337-1867. Let me see. Time check. 12 minutes left in the radio version of the spoken word. We'll continue on a little bit after with those of you who are chimed in on social media. We've been talking about George Floyd and Black America being on trial instead of Derek Chauvin being on trial, and how character assassination is fundamental to structural racism and white supremacy. That if they can thugify us and dehumanize us, then in the minds of the broader society, we weren't worth living anyway. So it'll be no big deal if someone takes our life, and they're not willing to send a police officer to prison. It's just like in 2013, Trayvon Martin was transformed from a typical teenager who'd ventured out to buy his favorite candy into a scowling, hooded gangbanger with a shady past and no future to speak of. They assassinated his character to make it okay for George Zimmerman to murder him. That's the same thing we're seeing in this George Floyd trial, unfortunately. Let me bring on. Put your camera down some.
All right, what's going on?
There you go.
You can't see me?
I see you now, but you know you was cutting your chin off.
Oh, not on the screen that I'm looking at. I'm sorry. Good morning.
What's happening?
Nothing much.
You got out of bed today. You stood me up last week.
Yeah. Um, kind of been dealing with some of the long-term effects of COVID, as you know. So, sometimes I'm more tired than I want to be. And sometimes I can't, sleep at all, regardless. So it's
Yeah,
been some stuff.
you be sleeping because I be
Good
hearing
morning, Miss Falva.
I be hearing you snore. So you obviously be sleeping.
hmm I don't know how that's possible when I be hearing you snore. Hey, baby. Whitney said, hi, Mom. Hi, baby. Hi, Whit.
Hmm. So what's going
hmm
on? So I've been talking about this.
I know,
Um,
babe.
I've been talking about this trial, and I've been talking
hmm
about them putting Black America on trial instead of the white police officer who actually committed the murder, and the proclivity of our clearer brothers and sisters, those of a lighter hue, the melanin deficient, to buy into. Yeah, it was a heart attack. Yeah, it was fentanyl. Yeah, it was, his health. And it seems like they are willing to really just accept anything to justify the brutalization and murder of black people.
In a moment of transparency here, I have to be honest. I started out trying to literally get through the trial. And just like I've never been able to get through the actual video that ended up going viral with the murder of George Floyd, I felt the same trauma and emotional peril that I experienced by listening to about 20, 30 seconds of the George Floyd video. So I've been certainly updating myself and following the trial by listening to commentary, but I haven't been able to watch it. It got really difficult for me uh, uh, to hear the different defenses and the questioning of the witnesses, especially when the black guy, which I can't remember his name, and God forgive me for that, because I think it's really important to remember people's name. But when the black guy was on the stand and basically the defense tried to make him the angry black man, that was very difficult to watch and to listen to.
Mhm.
And I also knew
Well,
that
they were
technique.
basically trying to
Yeah,
castigate him for what he was saying
exactly.
to the
Because he was
police as he
right,
was watching them murder a black man. Like
right,
it was worse for him to say some
to the
incendiary
police,
things
right,
than it
to the
was
police,
for the police actually murdering somebody. That was crazy
right.
to me.
So that was extremely difficult, or whatever. And then the 9-year old little girl, that was. We have 9-year-old grandbabies.
Mhm.
We have grandbabies that age. So that it's been hard. It's been hard, and I've even talked to some of the people, some of your listeners. We've talked kind of outside of the show, and Michael's on here. Hey, Michael. So Michael had reached out to me, and he was like, "First Lady, what do you think of the trial?" And I had to tell him, I haven't been able to, watch it. That has been very difficult. It's been traumatizing. And I think it's one of your frat brothers, babe. He's saying protect your mental health at all costs. I am a practicing mental health professional myself, Daryl. So I deal
with mental health every day, and I had to tell my supervisor this week that I'm a little off because of this trial. And I didn't want to admit it. I did not want to admit it, but the fact of the matter is the trial and the effects of this trial does have some weight, some mental health weight to it, for all of us who care about justice and who care about humanity. And that's just a fact. When our 13-year-old son can quickly tell you who Derek Chauvin is, that lets you know, or that lets us know just what state, um, you know, where we are mentally, where we are emotionally, as far as our concern about justice and I even have a hard time putting my words together because I get emotional because I just start thinking about how how these racist white people, and that's why I want to say racist white people. I want to put that disclaimer on it because I want to stop saying them. I want to say these racist white people who do all that they can, not only to hurt us and to harm us and to oppress us, but to do all that they can to keep us from receiving the justice that we deserve in many cases. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that, I guess.
Yeah. Let me remind you 3 minutes before we've got to sign off of WTCC, that we continue. Thank all of you who participated in last week in the first iteration of our Lift Every Voice lecture series with Dr. Keisha Blaine. So appreciative to you, to our planning team, and everyone who participated. The next iteration is coming up on the 27th, and our keynote speaker is Dr. Freddie Haynes. You don't want to miss that. That is on a Tuesday, April 27th. Dr. Freddie Haynes. So put a pin in there. You want to save that particular date because it's going to be a very, very, very special event that is taking place. And we're highlighting talent right here in our city. You should go back and watch last week's event. Shayna Joseph did a powerful piece entitled God is a Black Woman. And Youthful Expressions did dance. Vanessa Ford sang. And we've got more of the same, highlighting our own Springfield talent and bringing on some folks of international stature in terms of our keynote speakers. So please, ma'am, please, sir, put that in your calendar. Also, if you're looking for a place to worship, check us out at the Spring of Hope Church of God in Christ, Springfield, Massachusetts, 35 Alden Street. Of course, we're streaming live every Sunday at 11 o'clock a.m. First Lady be singing and stuff. I be preaching and stuff. So all that stuff is going on. Check us out. So we're going to move out of the way in terms of WTCC. We're going to come back and continue the conversation with our streaming audience. Don't you dare touch that dial. Like, share, subscribe. Let somebody know we're on the air. Until the next time I talk to you and you talk to me, remember God loves you. So do I. And we're back. All right.
I hope everybody stayed with us because they have really been putting in some fiery comments. Dr. Duncan said, if this trial doesn't affect you, then you really need help. He's a PhD. Dr. Duncan said that, and I agree. That's what I was trying to say. But I get emotional just even trying to find the right words to put together to articulate really how I'm feeling when I'm trying to discuss the trial and what's going on with it. Just the fact that the defense is implying that the public that was crying out for him to get his
They were
foot
rowdy.
off
They
of his
were.
neck or knee off of his neck, they're the reasons,
Yeah.
or they're the cause of his death. I mean, again, just traumatizing. This whole thing is just traumatizing. It's like, who can
It's blame.
create such, right?
It's blame everybody but the one who murdered him. Blame him. You know, if you hadn't been in bed, it's like when they started talking about his health. Oh, he had a blocked heart artery, all this stuff. So I'm like, okay, so I guess by logic, what you're saying is probably our foreparents would have lived longer when you were lynching them had they not been in bad health. You know, so maybe he would have lived with his neck on that rope, hanging from that tree had he been in better physical shape and ate right or something. That's how ridiculous they sound, trying to blame his health and blame him for the murder that all of the world saw in living color.
But babe, we've seen this a million times before. Again, it it reminds me so vividly of George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin. And he got off. It reminds me so vividly, these ridiculous arguments, defense positions. It reminds me so vividly of Eric Gardner, uh, because he outside, selling single cigarettes, that's justification enough, for him to be in altercation, with the police and for it to turn fatal. As if a baby, a Trayvon Martin was a baby. He was a baby. He was a child. And that's the other thing that I'm so sick of. And I said this, again, in conversation with my supervisor who checks in on my mental health because I'm a mental health professional, or whatever. When she was checking in on me, that's the other thing. I'm so sick of the media, and I'm so sick of us not calling it out. I'm so sick of us not calling out the fact that in a lot of these cases, these police officers or police have killed children, not men,
Mm-hmm.
not men,
Well,
not grown men,
they only
have
become
killed
men.
children.
They become men in the eyes of white society only when they're black. It's just
Yeah,
like
but we can't accept that. We
when they,
cannot accept
of
that.
course not. When they murdered um, Tamir Rice, they said they thought he was 21 years old. He was 12. Only with black youth do 12-year-olds become 21-year-olds, and then adult white folks become children all of a sudden. Like the lady who was one of the insurrectionists at the Capitol who went to court. She was 23 years old. They remanded her, let her out in the custody of her parents, like she was a little kid or something. So they treat adult white folks like they're children, and children who are black
Dylan Roof,
like they're adults.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I agree. But I'm just saying, anytime we see that and anytime we hear that, we need to call that out. We just can't talk over that as if they did not refer to this child as an adult. We can't do that We can't allow that to continue. It's very frustrating to me. I don't know if it's very frustrating to me because I'm a mother. I don't know, but and I hate when we have conversations about these cases and we neglect to call them children what they are. We neglect to call them children.
Yeah, well, it's something about being black, that you're always viewed as, and the irony of that, we're always viewed as being older than we are when the children. And I'm not trying to be funny, not trying to cast aspersions, not trying to be stereotypical. Y'all know good and well black folk look younger than white folk any doggone way, any day of the week.
It
Y'all
ain't got
need to
nothing to do
stop.
with looks.
Yeah, well, I'm
It
just
don't
saying
have
y'all
nothing to
need to
do with
stop
looks.
that. They need to stop that. You listen. You got a 26-year-old white dude who look like he's 45, and you know that's true. But all of a sudden, it's black kids that you're thinking 12-year-olds you're thinking are 21. No, 12-year-old black kids look like 12-year-old black kids. Period.
Can
And
I
even if
also, add this piece to the conversation? And don't let me get us off too much, babe. But this is just something that I think that I became more aware of, as a black woman. And so since I have this platform that you're sharing with me, and I just think that it's probably important for me to also share, some of the thoughts that I've been having. So one of the things that I want us to also remember when we're having these discussions about police brutality and a police fatality, that in other words, brutality that ends in death, unjust and innocent. And I oftentimes say this: even if they were all of the things that the defense and that the public, in some cases, the racist public or whatever, try to present, that still doesn't mean that they was deserving of death. Still doesn't mean that they was deserving of death. Still doesn't mean that they was deserving of mistreatment, maltreatment, and all of the other atrocities that have been served upon these children and men and women, which is a perfect segue to what I want to talk about. I want us as a public, as a community, and I'm talking specifically to black, brown, white, who believe in humanity, of all people who believe in humanity, for black people in particular, who believe in justice for black people in particular. I want us to remember that this is happening to black boys, children, and also men. But let's not forget that every day it's also happening to black women. It's also happening to black women. Not only are black women being mistreated, not only are black women and children, female children, being brutalized, but they're also being raped by by people in general, but also by police.
Well, they're also being abducted and
Right?
kidnapped, and there are numbers of black women who have
Absolutely.
gone missing
Absolutely.
that law
Let's not
enforcement
forget.
is doing nothing about because they're black
Absolutely
women.
nothing.
And I
And their
mean,
names are not on the radar.
the
Their names are
reality
not on
is,
the radar.
if they were white, they would be. And I mean, we dealt with that
Absolutely.
here years and years ago. I spearheaded an initiative to erect a monument that still stands downtown, right outside the courthouse, with the names of about 15 black women whose murders went unsolved, became cold cases, and only because we pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed did they finally reopen some of those cases and actually found a serial killer who killed about 4 of them. But the majority of those whose names are still on there to this day, and this was in the 90s, their murders remain unsolved. By contrast, during that same era, when Lisa Ziegert, a white woman across the river in Agawam, was missing, they got it on, what's the show that they used to have on several national syndicated shows to highlight the fact that she was missing until they finally solved that. And they didn't put any of those black women on any of those shows to highlight their murder or anything like that. And so this happens for black women all of the time.
Yeah, it does happen to black women all of the time. And just like, excuse me, just like black women have birthed all the other movements, this most recent one, Black Lives Matter, that came out of black women. We need for black men to stand up for us. We need for black men to stand up for us and say our names. We need for our names to be called. We need for our names to be called. We need for the public to remember that black women have been mistreated from its inception as well. And that black women have been raped and slain. That Me Too was birthed out of a black woman because we, again, our abuse was being neglected and ignored. So let's not forget that every day that we hear about, what's happening to black men and boys, trust me, somewhere out there, it's already happened to a black girl or woman and women.
Yeah.
Good
Cousin
morning,
Kang,
Selena.
I see you. I see you. I see you out there. George, I see you. Now, I don't really need to be doing this because, I get in trouble. I start calling all kinds of names and then I forget somebody and then somebody wants to know why I didn't call their name. All of y'all. There's a little thing I do in church sometimes. I say on 3, I want all y'all to say your name. And then they all say their name. And I say, now that all the important people have been called. So, yeah, good morning to all of you all who are out here, who vibe with us and roll with us, and just kind of hang out with us as we just talk about the issues of the day. It's therapeutic in some ways, and so somebody said to me one time, well, you talk about stuff, but you're not offering solutions. What are you going to do about it? I said, well, first of all, I've been working in the community doing something about stuff for 30 years. This is a talk show. This is to talk about the issues. And in many ways, this is therapy for us. When we can talk about the issues that affect us and y'all can call in on the program, and now with social media component, and you can make your comments on it. This is therapeutic for us. It's a way to kind of vent, to get things off our chest, and which is good for our mental health. So if y'all want to solve the problems, we can meet and talk about that behind the scenes and strategize and all that. We're not going to solve the problems on a talk show. Okay. But we can certainly.
Sometimes talking about it and bringing about your own awareness or your own consciousness, that is the first step in solving any problem. Because a lot of times the reason why a problem isn't solved is because you're ignorant to it, because of your own ignorance. So I oftentimes hear people say, I'm woke, I'm woke, I'm woke. You might be woke to some things, but you're not woke to everything. You're not woke to everything. So we ought to be awakening. So our consciousness, has the opportunity to awaken every day. And so with that being said, like I said, you got to raise the level of your own awareness first. That's the first step. So if you're providing a platform for, those conversations to take place to where people's awareness or people are edified in the area of justice and doing justice and love and mercy and loving humanity and becoming anti-racist, if you will, or whatever, that is doing something. That is problem solving.
Yeah. And I don't know how much I'm going to be able to. I did like a lot of folks, turn off the trial for a couple of days. It got to a point, when the defense was trying to basically assassinate his character. I said, I can't watch this, because it enraged me. And they say that this trial, this is the start of the second week. They said this can go on for 4 weeks. And you got to wonder why it would take 4 weeks when the video should have been all of the evidence that we needed to make the case and close the case. But it's saying this is going to be 4 weeks.
No, I know you didn't expect that.
Before a decision is made. And even then, we still can't have any level of confidence that justice will be served. Like I said earlier, all it takes is convincing one of these jurors, giving them a reasonable doubt that Chauvin's actions caused his death. All you need to do is get one of these jurors who will say, yeah, well, he did die of the fentanyl, or maybe it was the heart attack, to wind up with a hung jury and for this guy to walk free.
I want to take us back. I want to take us back to the trial. I think this was probably one of the first days. And I don't know if y'all remember, but it was a young lady who testified, young white lady, who actually was on the scene. She seen the whole thing go down. She was an EMT worker, and she was trying to tell the cop, we need to let us in, or let me in so I can check his breathing. You're killing him. And of course, she was told to get back, get away, whatever the case may be. And she said in her testimony that she called the police on the police. And of course, that's what other people were saying, that they were calling the police on the police because the police was murdering this guy, Of course, they didn't know who he was at the time, but the police was murdering this guy at the time. I found that, very interesting, and it's something that I picked up on. So here we go, have a conversation as a community right now, right, about this. And so somebody said, solutions. So calling the police on the police. To a certain extent, I think that maybe we ought to start looking into maybe creating, if in other words, if we're not going to be able to dismantle this current system of policing, because I believe that it needs to be dismantled. We need our own police force
that we can call when the police are abusing.
There we go. We need an entity, right? The community needs to raise up and create an entity that are overseers of the police. If we're not going to be able to destroy this one, the current one, because I do believe that this one needs to be torn completely down and started out over, because, again, history plays a huge part in the way that systems run, right? So we got to remember the origin of this current police system that we are dealing with. And with that being said, we're not going to be able to do anything with this unless we destroy it, unless it's torn completely down and we're able to reconstruct all together. And so since we're not thinking about that, then we just need to create a policing system that polices the police.
Yeah, and it's a shame when you need to police the police, but that's what we need to do in our community.
Yeah.
They aren't always good for our community. Good morning, Bishop George Adebanjo, my fellow Kojic Bishop out of Nashville, Tennessee, the Bishop of Pakistan. So honored that you would tune in and check us out. We need an entity to police the police.
We need an entity to police the police. You know, like in other words, that would be its origin. That would be its origin. That would be its uh what am I, you know, in other words, that would be the reason why it would be birthed, concepted and then constructed. That would be its conception and construction to police the police.
Now let me ask this because see, um, so I chimed in on this, and a lot of folks were like, "Oh no, 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 she's an ally." Cher, the entertainer, had tweeted out that she wishes that she was there because she could have done something. And there were a number of us who have said, okay, we don't think her heart was in the wrong place. We don't think it was malicious intent, but we just think it was ignorance in terms of how people would perceive what she said. And the way I perceived what she said was this. I said what she said was insensitive to the people who were actually there, who did try to save his life, who did try to do something, who did try to encourage Chauvin to get off his neck, who tried to
Black and white. Black and white.
challenge the other police officers to do something about him killing George Floyd. That how does it make them feel for her to then say to them basically that because I'm white and I'm a celebrity, I could have saved his life, but y'all couldn't? Because these people are literally traumatized and literally are going around with guilt because they couldn't do anything. And along comes this white celebrity basically saying, I could have been the white savior. If I was there, he'd be alive today. So there were many of us who criticized that comment. That's a comment you could have kept to yourself. We don't need to know, because when black people are being murdered by police, unfortunately, we don't have white celebrities in our hip pocket that we can pull out to intervene on our behalf. So, I took a lot of flack from folks who was like, oh, Cher is on your side. She's an ally. You're alienating people, blah, 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 blah. And it was all of these liberal, so-called progressive, so-called resistors who were like, oh, you're hateful. You're a racist. You're this, you're that. And I said, you know what? The same tactics that the Trumpers used whenever you condemn their white supremacy, liberals use those same tactics to attack black people if black people don't stay on code. If we attack their sacred cows, if we criticize their sacred cows, they can become just as racist and demeaning as the so-called people they were so-called resisting against. So I find some serious similarities between white conservatives and white liberals. And I remind you that it was Dr. King and Malcolm who did more criticism of the white liberals than they did of the white conservatives. What's your take on that?
A couple of things. Well, first of all, I totally agree with your perspective on that. I honestly did not share, oh, well, I didn't read it. I didn't hear it, and I didn't read it. So,
and she doubled down on it. She doubled down on it.
Well, of course she did. Of course she did. And she should have. And I got more respect for that, her doubling down, actually, after hearing a perspective like yours, if she doubled down after that. Because the fact of the matter is, I agree with you. She probably had good intentions, and Cher probably thinks, I'm not a racist. I love all people, or I got black friends, or whatever the case may be. The fact of the matter is that there are lots of white people that don't know that they help to push the white supremacist system. They have, I don't, some people are aware and some people are clueless, because like you have oftentimes said in some of your sermons, is that white supremacy didn't just do a number, or is not just doing a number on us, on black people as a whole, on black and brown people, on poor people, on marginalized groups, right? So white supremacy is not just doing a number on the oppressed, but white supremacy has done a number on the oppressor. So a lot of times, white people have absolutely no idea where they might be using their privilege and where they might be also endorsing and pushing white supremacy. So I think that's a prime example of how that is happening. So my consciousness tells me I'm not racist. I don't use the N word. I don't put my knee on the neck of black people. I think a Chauvin is a murderer and this, that, and the other. But also, at the same time, you're not doing anything to debunk the current policing system. That gets to a knee on the neck of a black man, or or tasing what was it, a 11-year-old, 12-year-old girl, tasing or pepper spraying. I'm sorry, pepper spraying a 12-year-old girl, or killing a young lady that is asleep in her bed in her apartment, and nobody has to pay for that death, or whatever the case may be. So, at the same time, you're not calling for the police system to change. You're not calling for the healthcare system to change. You're not calling, or whatever. You're not backing that. You're not calling for the educational system to change. It's good for you. Healthcare is good for you. Education is good for you. Policing is good for you. So, like I said, unless you're being anti-racist today, you know, unless you're being anti-racist today, you're racist and you're participating in a white supremacist system, and you're living a white supremacist lifestyle. Period. And you know what? I know that the majority of people that might be living those dual lives, or triple lives, if you will, are white people. But we have some black folk too. We have some black folk that participate in a white supremacist,
Oh yeah.
endorsement as well.
Oh yeah. Well, people often ask, "Oh, so you're saying this one is a white supremacist too?" And they think because they're black that that they're debunking what we're saying. You can listen. We've had black people who have been white supremacy apologists and sellouts ever since there's been black people. So that ain't nothing new. I mean, it was the Candace Owenses of their day that sold out Nat Turner, and that sold out Denmark Vesey, and many who were leading slave rebellions against their oppressors. It was the Hodge twins and the Diamonds and Silks, and the Angela Stanton Kings, and the Alveda Kings of their day.
Yeah,
Um,
we got some in our local
that
community
that
and
that
everywhere
so
across the country
yeah,
too.
yeah. I mean, Malcolm has probably one of the more powerful pieces on it, and when he talked about the difference between the field Negro and the house Negro, and we still got some field Negroes, and we got a bunch of house Negroes that still live among us today. So yes, black people can absolutely participate in perpetuating the system of white supremacy, and they do it all the time. Just like you got black police officers who, to impress their white benefactors, will be harder on black people and will be just as quick to go upside the head of a black person as white folk will, just to prove I'm not going to be soft on black people because I'm black. Um, you do realize that the first black police officers were on the plantation. They empowered and elevated certain black people and
That's
gave
the
them a whip,
origin. Hmm.
so that they could be overseers over their own people. Oversee, like
Right.
KRS-One said, overseer, officer. The
Hmm.
same difference. The overseer has transformed into the officer. And
Officer.
just like you
Hmm.
got black police officers, you had black overseers as
Hmm.
well. So yeah, we often participate in our own oppression,
Yes,
unfortunately.
absolutely. Absolutely. And so I just wanted to make that clear. And so I'm really more concerned about us, raising our consciousness to the point to where we don't participate in our own oppression. That's what I'm really concerned about. And I'm really concerned about our awareness being liberating and certainly empowering. Um, and so, I think that Black women are taking the lead on that. I think that Black women are taking the lead on that.
Yeah. So let me make this announcement again. It's one of those Mondays, I don't know why people, when preachers preach on Sunday and all that, used to be a day and time where they took Monday off. It's like, even in the church world, it's like we schedule so much stuff on Monday. So, I got a pastor's council meeting and all kinds of other stuff that I got to get to. But let me once again push the Lift Every Voice lecture series on April 27th. One of the greatest preachers in the nation is going to be with us, the Reverend Dr. Freddie Haynes III.
Yeah, if you wasn't my
You don't
favorite,
want to
he would
miss
be
it.
my favorite, hands
Yeah,
down. If
yeah.
you wasn't my favorite, he would be.
So y'all don't want to miss it. Y'all don't want to miss Dr. Freddie Haynes on April 27th. It's going to be off the charts. We'll be streaming live at 7 o'clock p.m. So go and register. Go to our Facebook page, Spring of Hope Church of God in Christ. Register at focusspringfield.com / lift every voice. Somebody ought to put that in the comments. Focusspringfield.com / lift every voice. Register so you can come into the webinar, because after the presentation, he'll be doing a Q&A. So you'll be able to participate directly in the webinar. And we definitely love to have you. And again, check us out at Spring of Hope Church, 35 Alden Street. But we stream live every Sunday at 11 o'clock a.m. You got anything else you want to add, babe?
No, not really. I mean, I know you got to rush and go, but it was good being back, and I missed y'all last week.
She stood
Continue to
me up
pray.
last week. She
Yeah,
stood me
continue
up.
to pray for us. It was another first. It was Easter. Well, I don't like to call it Easter. It's Resurrection Sunday. So Resurrection weekend or Holy Week was a special week. It's always a special week for me. And but this was our first without my mom. So it was kind of tough, getting through emotionally. But so this is the year, the first for me and my family. So continue to pray for us, and certainly I'm asking for you to continue to pray for me as I try to recover from COVID 19 from COVID.
All right, y'all. Got to get out the way. Listen, I need y'all to go to naacpspringfield.org, sign up, become a member, get involved, be down with us, okay? Doing some big things around this city, so check us out. Till the next time I talk to you and you talk to me, always remember, God loves you, and so do I. Deuces. See y'all later.